This self-defense school will blow your mind. But before I tell you more about it, let's take a look at why this self-defense school is so exceptional. Many martial artists, while talking about self-defense while training at their dojos, forget a lot of important aspects, such as, for example, that you won't get attacked on tatamis while wearing your gi. Many martial arts schools also forget to add other elements, such as the element of surprise, the use of improvised weapons, and most importantly, pressure testing. Instead, most martial arts schools that claim to teach self-defense are only teaching martial arts techniques starting from a specific attack with no resistance and in a very sterile and conditioned way. While this problem has been addressed by some self-defense experts by adding scenario-based drilling, pressure testing, and elements of an environment, this self-defense school took things to a whole new level. It is led by Jeff Phillips, who used to be part of the Krav Maga scene, but eventually left it for the same reasons mentioned before. In his words, the Krav Maga schools he was part of lacked a sense of realism and did not pressure test the techniques to realize what truly works and what doesn't. In order to offer quality training methods, Jeff instead opened up his own school called Western Combatives and made it into something exceptional. The main reason, among many others, I find this school so great is that the whole Western Combatives building features realistic environments which occur naturally all the time in our everyday lives. But I'll let Jeff tell you more about it through this interview he just recently did.
The biggest thing that we provide is context, because we've made each and every room represent a different industry or a different area where people are more likely to be attacked. We have a room that's set up like a bar, hospitality.
I like this setting. All right, what's going on here?
And so right now we have an aggressor in a pub situation. He's using the environment to help himself, get himself out of danger. As well as that, as we walk through this area, as you can see, it's our kitchen area, which you might think, well, you don't necessarily train in a kitchen, but here we use it for things like real estate agents. So you might get a young real estate agent, a lady who takes people around open houses, and as she walks through, she's alone in a house with strangers, and it's quite hazardous, really. There's potential to go wrong. We've seen that most techniques that people show others do not work under these settings. So the environment is key. It's all well and good to be able to do it in a large sort of a martial arts setting, but can you do it where it matters, like on a train? Can you do it in a hospital ward? Can you do it on an ambulance? In all those places?
Now, this is where all the training happens.
Yeah, so the difference between here and the bar area, things can go wrong. So by that I mean there's a chance of injury. Here we have this soft modular furniture and shapes that we can basically make look like anything. So this one can represent a bar just like that, and we can train at a higher intensity, a lot safer. It could be a McDonald's counter. You know, we've had McDonald's staff come in and train as well. One of the biggest professions that's always at risk is paramedics and nurses, anyone in healthcare. So we cater to that. We do a lot of programs for that. We run free programs for nurses just to give back to them for all the wonderful things they do to us.
The building also involves other real-life settings, even a simulated bus environment. And to make things better, Jeff and his students sometimes goes to train in real buses to condition the body and the brain for a real-life self-defense encounter. Now I know what some of you are thinking while watching the bus scene video, but their techniques are really poor. They look nothing like the martial arts self-defense techniques that I train in. But that's the whole point. If you were ever in a real self-defense situation, you'd know that martial arts, fighting, and self-defense are three different areas. And if you're very good at martial arts, it doesn't mean that you're good at self-defense and that your martial arts skills will come up during a real 100% intensity encounter. And that is because our brains work differently in different environments and stress levels. In a traditional martial arts school, the stress levels are usually very low and the environment is safe and predictable. But then once you are attacked, say, on a bus, and the adrenaline kicks in, the brain starts to work in a very different way. And if you haven't trained under such conditions, unpredictable environment, full strikes, and someone who is really trying to get you, it's very likely that in a real situation, you will get lost, and even the techniques that would otherwise work under these circumstances will not come up, look, or act the same way. One way to prove this point is to look at MMA fighters who in a pre-fight conference get into a brawl. With the element of surprise, an unusual environment, and a quick spike in adrenaline, they quickly stop looking like professional fighters. So what are the hopes of someone who is not even a professional fighter to look good and perform complicated moves in a real self-defense situation? In order to narrow down on this problem, I also called up Jeff himself to comment on this issue.
When martial arts spar, so whether it's taekwondo, karate, kung fu, whatever, it looks like really bad MMA. So I want to take that
further and say when people actually have a self-defense encounter, it looks like a drunken pub brawl. The more you up the intensity, the worse it looks generally. You know, you spar at 50% intensity, and I can do jumping, spinning kicks and all that stuff. But when the intensity rises, the techniques that you can do drops, and it drops and drops. And when you get to 100%, things like boxing will remain. It doesn't really look like an art form, but that's our sort of focus, and our small toolbox is all geared around that. Yeah, I guess to look like a drunken pub brawl, something that would thrive in there, the things that we know work. People don't realise that it's not fun training at that level. It's hard, it hurts, it's demoralising because you look terrible, but it's where the truth lies. I think the truth lies in that zone of 90 to 100% intensity.
I also asked Jeff to comment on the importance of training in realistic environments and why that is so important.
Take Taekwondo for example, where it's kicking heavy or predominantly kicking. You can't do that on a bus or train, particularly if they're moving. The confined space also. And also if you think about, say, a hospital, an emergency ward, when there's body fluids on the floor, try and throw a spinning kick there, you're going to end up falling flat on your face. So all those things come into play. What you think you can do and what you can actually do are very different. And if you don't take them into account, you're in for a rude shock. Like I've seen people lose fights by just falling back over a chair. And good fighters too, who should have won that encounter, have lost it for that reason. I once had an altercation in a car, and it was nothing like I anticipated. It was just so difficult and so many problems. And the more that we've done it on this bus, the better people get at it, and the more your strategies sort of start to formulate themselves. And you realise that, hey, I can do this by doing these things. It's very different from your general sparring. You can have the kid that's the worst in the class or the adult that's the worst in the class. If he can jam that person in between two seats, it's over for them. So there's sort of little tactics and strategies that you can implement, and I think it's great. I love doing it myself too.
Jeff and I then discussed how most martial arts schools don't train the use of improvised weapons, nor how it doesn't come naturally to people unless they're trained in that.
You would just assume that people would do it naturally, and people assume that they would do it naturally. But surprised how many people miss it. Like we did that sort of crazy knife day where the person would have their back against the wall in the corner. When they'd hear the door shut, they would turn around and instantly they have to sort of like survey the environment and see what's there. All the times we put like a basketball there, others we put like a mop. You'd be surprised how many people actually miss it. When I do women's courses as well, we do something similar where we have this gauntlet where they walk through this building and people attack them. And I would always put like a mop across this door where there was this guy who would act like he's a junkie, have this syringe and come at them. And yeah, my thoughts were the majority of them would pick that up and use it. And we'd have 10 women go through it and only one would pick it up and use it. We just do things like that to test people to see if it's going to register and it doesn't. Because if you're not consciously looking for things, you're going to do it in the time you need it.
Now, since you're still watching this video, I have a secret to tell you. And no, it's not an ad. A year ago, I had an idea to gather together all the best known martial arts YouTubers, including Jesse Enkamp, Ramsey Dewey, Icy Mike, and others, and then to bring them to Jeff's school in Australia to do the ultimate self-defense competition, performing various challenges such as escaping a group of knife attackers, surviving a bus mayhem, and more, in order to find out who is the ultimate self-defense man. While last year I wasn't able to organize this event for a number of reasons, this idea is still in my head, and I wanted to ask you if you would be interested to see such an event organized, filmed, and made into a YouTube series. Let me know what you think about it in the comments, and if enough people will be interested, I'll start looking again into making it happen. Meanwhile, if you want to see a video where Jeff explains why he quit Krav Maga, click on this video right here. Thank you for watching, and as always, I wish you to own your journey.